Let me say how honored I am to share this platform today with General Yakubu Gowon, who is rightly described as a living symbol of Nigerian unity. But I believe that his greatness lies in his policy of no victor, no vanquished, when he began a process of healing a nation bruised, damaged, and embittered by a 3-year civil war. There's no question at all that great leadership comes from some sort of self-sacrifice. Great leadership comes from some sort of compassion. And I want to thank General Yakubu Gowon for playing that role at a crucial moment in our history. I'm glad to see that he's here today, again to advise that we must not repeat the errors of the past. I must also commend the Institute of Security Studies for providing this important platform for reflection on the subject of the corporate existence of Nigeria in its diversities. It's easy to take for granted the work that thought leaders such as the distinguished faculty here do, but we must remind ourselves that often the difference between tragedies of human conflict, hate, and disunity is what is said and done, or what is not said and done, by those charged with thinking and planning for society in crucial times. I believe it's the bounden duty of institutes like this to dispassionately interpret and apply sociological circumstances, and especially history, to present the choices and alternative pathways for our nation and its peoples. For example, let us just take history. Reading and hearing history is a much different experience from being a part of history. Both have their advantages and drawbacks. The witnesses of the horrors of war will not wish it on their worst enemies. Even recalling it may bring back the trauma of that period. The mental and physical scars of war are sometimes so deep that rational thought on the subject is impugned. On the other hand, those who only read or heard history may have the advantage of approaching life without the bitterness and burdens of history. But they are often so far removed that they tend to minimize or even dismiss the ramifications of history. My wife turned 50 last month, and I had to say to her that anyone of her age was born only in the year the Civil War began, and that such persons, including those who are under 40, are probably largely responsible for many of the inflammatory statements that we're hearing today, stoking up war. As you can imagine, I endangered my dinner that evening. But I think that it is true that the farther away one is from the horrors and deprivations of war, the less impact that it has on one's thoughts, one's motivations, and one's worldview. We must not allow the dangerous amnesia that leads nations unwittingly to the fatal repetition of tragic errors. Permit me to share a few thoughts, some of which emerged from my interactions with the thought leaders from the Southeast and the North in the wake of the secessionist threats by young people in the Southeast, some youth groups in the Southeast of Nigeria, and the ultimatum issued by some youth groups in the North. I want to look at a few what I describe as false narratives. The first false narrative is that we often say that countries formed the way ours was formed are doomed to fail. In other words, countries formed without a deliberate agreement of people to come together are bound to fail. This is what some people have said, that Nigeria is a mere geographical expression And for that reason, it is not likely to succeed as a united whole. But those who say so do not know that even the expression, mere geographical expression, used in relation to a country was not first used in relation to Nigeria. As a matter of fact, it was the German statesman Clemens von Metternich who used this same expression for Italy. He simply summed up Italy as a mere geographical expression, exactly a century before Nigeria was born. Italy is still a mere geographical expression, but it is still a nation. And so we must not be misled by those who, in some pseudo-intellectual way, suggest to us that the mere fact that we did not deliberately one day hold a conference to come together means that we should not or cannot stay together. Indeed, we can. Most countries of the world came together by some accident of history, one way or the other. Many were put together, many were forced together, but the wise have remained together. The wise have remained united. The second false narrative is that one particular ethnic or religious group is more responsible for the Nigerian problems than the other. Or, for that matter, that one is superior to the other. My experience is exactly the opposite. As a matter of fact, you find, and I've found and I've repeated this several times, that whenever you look at a charge sheet, that's a sheet where people have been charged with an offense, especially those who have served one way or the other in the federal government of Nigeria, charged with stealing or corruption, you will never find one ethnic group alone represented. You will always find an equal representation. You will always find a very equal representation of the ethnic groups. There is complete unity in this business of stealing. Complete unity. You will also not find one religious group. No. You will find that there is nobody arguing about religion when it comes to these matters. The truth of the matter is that where we have won, it is where we have not paid attention to religious or ethnic differences. Our football teams, because we want to win, we don't ask ourselves questions about whether the people are from one side of the country or from another, or whether they are Muslims or Christians, or whether they don't believe in God at all. All we're interested in is just score, just win. And I want to say that that's exactly where we should be as a nation today. We should just be telling ourselves, just win, just score. Doesn't matter where you're from. So long as you are in government or wherever you are, just win for this nation. And we don't want to ask questions about where we're from. Another false narrative is that we are better off when our own, that is, persons from our own ethnic groups are in charge, that we are better off. The experience of history and our experience is, of course, the exact opposite of that. As a matter of fact, what history has shown us, what the facts have shown us, is that no ethnic group has necessarily been better off, either economically or even socially, merely because a member of its ethnic group was the leader of this country at that time. There's no fact to support that whatsoever. And that's how it's always been. The fifth narrative, which I want us to look at, and which I believe also is false, is that those who make these charges of marginalization are altruistic. Those who say, my ethnic group has been marginalized, my religious group has been marginalized, that they say so for altruistic reasons or altruistic purposes. I want to say that that's not necessarily the case. As a matter of fact, most times when people say, the Southwest has been marginalized, what they're saying is, I have been marginalized appoint me because I'm from the Southwest. That's simply what it is. Whenever people propose these or make these charges of marginalization, usually it is self-serving. I sat with the president once when two members of the National Assembly came to him and said that we, referring to an ethnic group in the North, or it's not an ethnic group, states in the North, have been marginalized. And he went on to explain why. He said that, and mentioned some states had no senior ministers. He said Kaduna State has no senior minister. The only minister is a minister of state. Mentioned also, I believe Sokoto State has no senior minister. Even Katsina, your own state, Mr. President, has no senior minister. All of the ministers are ministers of state. Then he mentioned another group and said all these people all have senior ministers. Some groups in the South have senior ministers. The president, as you can imagine, reflected for a moment. But before he answered, I answered. I said the truth of the matter is that there was no consideration at the time that these appointments were made about whether or not you wanted to appoint a senior minister from this side or the other, or from that side or the other. And that's why you find that many, including the president's own state, does not have a senior minister. The distinguished members were not very happy with my contribution. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at any group, if you look at any particular situation, you can bring up a narrative that will satisfy your own particular idea or whatever it is that you believe. You can bring up that narrative. A group of people came to me once and said, this cabinet is full of Muslims. You are a pastor. Surely you should be taking care of the Christian community. When we looked at the names and the religions of these people, we found that there were 2 more Christians than Muslims in the cabinet. We now have 1 more Christian than Muslims in the cabinet. But you see, the part of it that even bothered me is that even the Christians, many of them, as you can imagine, a Christian, some of them, I always say, I'm not even so sure whether or not what their faith is. On both sides, there are Muslims, I'm not so sure what their faith is. There are Christians, I'm not even so sure what their faith is. They're not even committed. Some are not even committed. But the impression is that these are, the moment a person is appointed, it's almost as if these are militants for their religion. Many of them don't even subscribe fully to their faith in any way. The 6th narrative is that hate speech is freedom of expression, and that we should allow it. And I want to say to you that that is the biggest mistake that can ever be made by any group of people. Every major catastrophic human conflict has been begun by hate or extremist ideology, especially hate speech. In particular, every genocide in human history has been preceded by hate speech. And it is promoted by the media, sometimes promoted by public discourse. But always, hate speech precedes genocide and some of the greatest tragedies in human history. Our situation is worse now with social media, instant communication of any type of news. Most of it false, most of it divisive, most of it dangerous. We must do something about hate speech. We must do something about it. We must control hate speech. And we must insist that it is not acceptable that public discourse of any type, whether it be on radio or on social media, we cannot allow the promotion of hate speech. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, had reason to sentence several persons, owners of media, to long terms of imprisonment over the Rwandan genocide. because many radio stations promoted hate speech, and the promotion of hate speech led to the killing of over 1 million Rwandese in April of 1995 or 1994. We must refuse, and we must refuse a hearing for those who perpetrate these sorts of hate speech and ideology. The last narrative that I want to look at is that we are better apart than together. Of course, that is not so, and I think that that was so eloquently presented by the DG SSS when he quoted when he made that quotation where he was talking about how different parts of our country have their strengths. Each one of them can survive as a nation, as an individual nation, but none of them can compare to Nigeria in any way. None of them will be more viable. None of them can be as successful as a country such as this coming together. The other day, I was listening to, I think it was at the AU, where I was listening to some of the comments from several African leaders. And I was whispering to the gentleman next to me that Rwanda is one of those countries that is celebrated for good governance and celebrated for a few things, and even for its economy. But the entire Rwandese economy, compared to Lagos, just Lagos, Lagos is 6 times the size of the Rwandese economy. 6 times. And Lagos is just one state of our 36 states. And that is exactly what is repeated everywhere you go. The truth of the matter is that by our sheer size, our markets, our combined resources, this country is much, much greater. And its potential is even far greater than the potential of most countries anywhere in the world, not just in Africa. And we owe ourselves a duty to present that narrative correctly. What must we do? I think first of all we must ensure, and here, I'm speaking not just to leaders, but to all of us, that we must ensure that there is respect for each other. We must respect each other. We must respect the views of each other. In conversation, in interactions, we must show respect for each other. We must respect each other's religions. We must respect each other's views. The language of interaction, the language of exchange must be civil. We must not permit a situation where people talk anyhow. Whether they are leaders or elders, we must not tolerate a situation where people are allowed to speak in any manner that they desire. There must be a proper language. There must be a way of speaking properly. We can't allow people to just speak in any way that they want. The assurance of protection of lives and property is a very crucial one. It's a crucial one. We have no choice, especially as government, to assure every Nigerian of the protection of their lives and property. And this is something that the president said, not just in the early days of the government, but even in more recent times, that as far as he was concerned, the first duty of government is ensuring security of lives and property, ensuring that each and every Nigerian is confident that wherever he lives, he will be protected. It's a difficult duty, it's a difficult task. Governing a country and ensuring security and safety for a country of 170 million people. But because that is the challenge that the president has thrown, we are working on all of the agencies of government, the police, the security services, the armed forces, to ensure that not only do they understand that that is the first and primary duty of government, but that they are given the capacity to implement that duty and to perform that duty properly. The second is that we must approach social justice seriously. Our compact with the Nigerian people, especially leadership at all levels, we must approach social justice seriously. poverty is a ready recipe for all manner of social problems. Ready recipe. Very many poor people mean that there's a pool of individuals who have no stake in society. And so it's our business to ensure that people have a stake in society. I remember during the campaigns when the president would point to, the people who are all over, hundreds of thousands of them, many pressing their faces against the bus that were traveling in all over. And it's more than one said to me, he said, look at the faces of these people. He said, what they expect is that by the second day after we take office, you must solve all their problems. And I said to him, no, that's what they expect of you, not me. But I think that the truth is that we have a duty to ensure that we deal seriously with issues of poverty, with issues of social justice. That is why, for the first time in the history of this country, when we're thinking through budgeting, we looked at the questions of social intervention and the social investment programs. And the total outlay for social investment in the 2016 budget and in the current budget is 500 billion. The largest single item in the budget, 500 billion, the largest single item in our budget. And I think that this is significant because we believe that government's duty is to ensure that there is social justice, that we deal with poverty. Not just, and the social investment program is not a poverty alleviation program, no. It is an empowerment program to ensure that those who are poor and those who are vulnerable are given a real chance at earning an income for themselves. And that is really the underlying philosophy behind our social intervention programs. I'll move on quickly. The other point is controlling and dealing with corruption and the impunity that attends it. Corruption is possibly the worst evil that this country has experienced or will experience. It's possibly the worst, because it definitely is the major reason why this country is set back economically. There is no other single reason. If you are looking for one single reason, the single reason is corruption. Because this country has resources, not just material resources, but human resources in abundance. But the fact that some want to corner the resources for themselves is what accounts for where we are today economically. And I think that it's important that we understand it for what it is. Many times, people find excuses of every kind to excuse corruption. And it is so, for religious leaders, political leaders, ethnic leaders, look for all sorts of reasons to justify corruption. Somebody is taken to court, they say, oh, the reason why he's taken to court is because he belongs to another political party. Why don't we ask the question, did he steal? Did he steal? If he did, then he should be in court anyway. He should be taken to court. There must be justice. That's the first question we should ask. We should not look for excuses for people who make our future impossible. We should not look for excuses for them. Part of the reason why other countries of the world hold their leaders to account, and if you look at all the countries of the world today, Brazil only recently sent a past leader to jail. Thailand, any country, Israel, any one of these countries, they hold their leaders to account. They don't allow anybody to hide under any excuse. And if you look at the reasons today why so many are poor and why so many have no resources, it's because some people chose to corner all of it. And we cannot afford to do so. It's our duty. It's our duty as a people to stand against corruption and to say that it will not stand. Anyone who is corrupt should be held to account. And we should compel our governments to ensure that that is done. The last is that we must actively promote the narratives that promote unity, especially young people. And I think that it's so important that young people promote these narratives. I was so glad to hear General Gowon speaking directly to young people. And I think that when you look at it, even in the days when the Civil War was fought, those who fought the Civil War, like General Gowon, Lieutenant Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu at the time, were all very, very young people. Very, very young. I believe General Gowon was about 34 at the time or so. And Dieter Spieth, who was governor of the whole of Rivers and Bayelsa, was 23 years old. I'm sure that most of the young men who are here are probably older than that. Most of them were under 35 years old at the time. So the destinies of a country lie essentially, and especially our own country, where 2/3 of people in our country are young. The destiny of this country lies with the young people. Sometimes when I hear young people being described as leaders of the future, I just wonder. Because the future is already here. There is no question at all that you are leaders today. And let me just say to you young people that nobody is going to stand aside and say, now it's time for young people to take over. No, young people simply take over. You simply organize and you do what you need to do to take over politically. You must be directly involved in the politics of your country. You must be directly involved in all of those issues of your country. That will make a difference. If people stand aside and say, one day we'll be brought in, you may really need to wait for a very long time. We cannot turn back the hand of the clock or correct the past. But we have the power under God to determine what our future should be like. Our nation has proved the paradox that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We are greater together than apart. Thank you very much.